Collingwood and Hawthorn. I mean, Kingy, a slaughter with a foundation that was a defensive high-pressure masterclass from Collingwood. The boa constrictor got a hold of them, squeezed the life out of them. The tackle differential, a lot has been made of that. The biggest in Collingwood history, plus 44, the widest gap in any game for, I think, 14 years. And Hawthorn, the other side, 13 players with one tackle or less. So close to the best we've played, Craig McRae says. Sam Mitchell says we're miles off it. Hawthorn are in real strife, are they not?
Yeah, well, I think we'll start with Collingwood because we watch a lot of footy, right? And you're always looking to see what's going well, what's working, what needs some room for improvement, whether it's personnel or system or just sheer performance. I can't recall seeing a home and away game played with such quality and such polish. They were awesome, both sides of the ball, Collingwood. Not necessarily at winning it, but they were awesome when they got it and how they used it. And then when they lost control of the footy and Hawthorn had it, my God, did they just take their time and space immediately and force them into chaos? It was the perfect performance. And I don't think we've seen too many perfect games. We were chatting about it yesterday, and Jay Clark and Joey made some good point. I think the most perfect final we've ever seen was the grand final of last year. At Brisbane, just every post was a winner.
Yep.
And it had been, you can go back to 07 Geelong, the 20-goal mauling of Port for a greater demolition. But in terms of from start to finish, playing exactly the way you want to play and mapping the game out perfectly, Craig McRae would be blown away with the levels that this group have achieved. It's the first time we've probably seen this lineup together. What are they missing, DeGoey and McStay?
Yep, that's it. They made 5 changes coming into this game. So, but it doesn't really matter who's pulling the Guernsey on at the moment, is it? It's a real plug and play. The system, as you say, is absolutely humming. And for the golden oldies are all playing amazing footy. Like, there's a special place for those, I reckon, who reach new heights in the twilight. And Jamie Elliott's one of those. Like, I mean, he's second in the Coleman. Helps himself to another 5. He's 32 and he's in season 14. And he's comfortably on track for a career best season. He's flying at the moment.
So I had a look at their experience. So they're averaging 150 games per player. Look, I haven't seen that sort of level. I mean, the second most experienced team in the comp this year is Brisbane at about 135 games. That's a big gap. So you've got one season per player advantage. That would be the highest ever. So 16 of the 23 had played 100 games. Soon to be 17. I think it's Bobby Hill's 100th game either this week or next. So there'll be 17 of the 23 have played 100 games or more. So in terms of what that does for you, it's really just a greater understanding of what is required at that moment of the game.
Yep.
Whether it's with ball or without ball. And I just think we've talked a lot about the age of this group and not enough about the experience of this group and what the benefits of that. And Craig McRae knows that Jared Wade is probably the most important man at Collingwood right now. To straighten and hold this form and hold this health if you can. And you can't help bad luck. And if you get that, well, so be it. But to have this group in the physical shape that they're in now, in 3 months' time, must be a significant challenge. I mean, I can't get my head around how they put these programs together, but that's the challenge now to hold this group's health.
Yep, probably Dan Houston's best game for his new club as well. And as people are saying here, we forgot Braden Maynard, who's no small inclusion either. So DeGoey, Maynard, McStay plug back in, albeit I'm sure they'll have some personnel hiccups throughout the back half of the season. That's just life.
So what do you love? What I think people out there, if you're a Collingwood supporter,
I love Billy Frampton.
You love Billy?
How well's he going?
Yeah.
Billy.
It's working well having Billy on the main man and Darcy Moore.
Yep.
And Jeremy Howe floating in. I thought Jeremy Howe's game was terrific, and he only had 10 touches. It's more the way he saves his teammates.
I just love to know how Craig McRae does it, how he coaches them. David, we've had Clarko's cluster now. There's McRae fly trap, tempting and pressuring opposition teams into errors. Like I saw a clip, pre-season clip of him coaching at the well. I know Fox put it up, but he was mic'd up and he was coaching his players and they were doing game sim, and it was fascinating listening. How does he get them so in sync with each other, the system with and without the ball? Yeah. It's just a beautiful thing to watch. The behind-the-goals vision you can never tire of watching.
I'm looking forward. Sometimes the coaches' votes are just so obvious. You just know where they're going. And I accept that Jamie Elliott will probably get, 8 minimum for the game that he played. He was clinical. But I'm fascinated to see where the other votes go. The coaches' votes we've talked about a couple of times. I'd like to know which clubs gave which 5-4-3-2-1, just to see what Sam thought of the Collingwood performance and who particularly, and what Craig McRae thought of his own troops and which way he slanted. So
Yep.
I would like to see that. But again, Ned Long was terrific with 10 score involvements. Nick Dacos, does he get the 3 votes again? I mean, do the umpires just say, well, okay, he's kicked 5, but is 5 enough for the 3? I don't know if 5 takes the 3 votes when you've got the midfielders running right. And I sort of think it's hard to escape when you've got to write down 3 names. To not write Nick Dacos is a tough thing to do when he's had 32.
They're at the peak of their powers right across the board. In the other change room, it was a very different story. This is Sam Mitchell, the coach of the Hawks, after the loss at the weekend.
I think it was pretty clear to everyone that was here and those watching at home that, we're at this point miles off it. That's what we need to aspire to and above to beat them when it matters. And we've got plenty of work to do.
I want to let you loose on the Hawks because last year Jack Ginnivan was putting them to sleep. You remember in the goal square, there were TikTok videos, there were documentaries made. How do you diagnose a problem like Hawthorn halfway through this season?
Well, in Corn and the Morn, to be fair, if Kane was going to be ruthless on a team, forget the love for Sam Mitchell as the genius and those sorts of things and the wizard Watson. We've never seen a team that's finished 6th or 7th the previous year do a doco about their pre-season, all guns blazing, going into the next and failing. You have to deliver. So I think it's been a much hyped season. It's far from lost, let's be honest, but there's some work to do. I mean, they reflect their captain at the moment. Really clunky, out of form. Their systems are being challenged by the seriously good teams. They've lost their punish. Their asset was their ability to slice and dice when in possession, and you just see those halfbacks charging. They hit the corridor and they're all fanning wide. It opens up that big void in the middle of the ground, and then your smalls can take control in the forward half of the ground.
It was instinctive, wasn't it?
They haven't got that at the moment. It's gone, and I just wonder with the they've got a really tall back line. Scrimshaw's out of form, Sicily's out of form. Battle's working hard to cover for everyone. Barris hasn't been. I don't think he's been the complete package that they thought they were getting. He hasn't been that yet, and they're only a dozen weeks in. I get that. It can change in the back half of the year, but they don't have the same run. They don't have the same purpose with the ball. Impey does it every now and then. Obviously, he didn't seem to do it on the weekend. Only the 3 score involvements. They just don't have the freedom, that express freedom. Do you agree with that?
Yep, absolutely. They don't look as instinctive as what you had. Some great vision on first crack last night as well. And half the time, it's only a little fumble here and there when they're gone, and the moment's gone against a team like Collingwood. And then worse, they were actually coughing up goals as a result. So some of that decision making, the skill execution, a lot has been made of their tackle pressure. But I don't know, the way they set up, they're never going to have 80-odd tackles in a game, are they? They don't play that style, do they? That chaos.
Well, if it is that style of game, it's a Collingwood game rather than a Hawthorn game. Look, Jay Clark pointed out last night, on first crack, the lack of the sheer pressure number, how low how it's plummeted, and then I guess the tackle pressure obviously is a part of that. But where to is the question. What do you do? So I'm not as concerned as. I think Sicily has to go forward because I still think he's going to be their best forward in the back half of the year.
So just on James, what did you think of the vision that that was put out there from the Hawthorn rooms when Sam Mitchell was having that, cleansing session with the players and they're sitting there and whatnot and we're all trying to assess body language and James has just got his head in his hands staring at the floor. Like he's hurting would be my obvious takeaway from that, but he's stuck in a rut at the moment. He can't get out of it.
Well, it's impossible to lead when you're underperforming and to this level. It's almost – and a lot of people making excuses that he's injured. Well, he's clearly at a level where he can compete and play. They wouldn't be playing if his groins are hanging by a thread.
Well, he's denied that multiple times, the coach.
So that was the rumour getting floated around last week. I don't believe in that. And I think if you put your hand up, we just have to assess you as we do every other player. So the fact that he has 4 kicks for a game just makes it impossible for him to stand and demand in front of the group. He's in a really awkward position right now.
And they've got the Dogs Thursday off a bye
Yeah.
into Adelaide down in Tassie. So tough fortnight before their first bye, the Hawks.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm more looking at the forward of the ball. I look at Marbior and he does some nice things. But does he really gut bust and run and create and charge and challenge? Gunston sort of looks like he's got his good weeks and his bad weeks, and you're never quite sure until you see him on the move. I think Hardwick has to go back. I don't think it's necessarily working. He's not Jamie Elliott. He may have been, he may be able to do it in a burst, in a quarter as a swingman type, but I just don't see him. Down. I think they need to go smaller in their back line, get Sicily forward, and whether that's at the expense of Gunston, who's a really good start to the year in terms of the first sort of 6 or 8 weeks, or Chol. And they're tough calls to make.
Lloyd Meek will be there next week against the Dogs, or on Thursday, after he clattered into the back of Pat Lipinski. No case to answer in the eyes of the MRO. Did they get that right?
I think they did.
I do too.
You're still going to have those challenges physically, and I didn't think it was anything outside of what we're accustomed to at AFL level.
He was hung, drawn and quartered pretty quickly, a 3-weeker. Absolutely, in real time.
Yeah.
By most observers, I think.
You want to name some
But at the end of the day, there
I
wasn't.
feel like you want to name
all
some
of
names.
you, all of you. But at the end of the day, I don't think there was a reportable offence committed. I don't think it met the threshold for rough conduct. So the arm was out to spoil. The eyes are on the ball, not the player, and no high contact was made. Pat Lipinski, unfortunately, failed the HIA. His head hit the ground pretty hard, and Lloyd Meek would otherwise be liable for that. But you've got to commit a reportable offence to be held liable for that.
I heard you on Saturday morning, and you were spot on. If that's what you want me to say, you were spot on.
I don't want you to say anything.
I feel like that's where you want me to go.
Don't want you to say anything. But there's been I want to say a loosening or a relaxing, but there's been a couple of people who have been. So Alex Pearce gets off. So the old accident in the game has just come back to the surface a little bit over the last week or so.
And we're going to get to Greg Swan later on with the report Jay Clark's gone with that he's been offered the role as that opposing role or that adjacent role to
Football performance. Yep.
To Laura Kane with all the goodies, all the good jobs. If that is the case, I think that's the first point. You've got to have an intent to commit an act that's outside of the code before it's a report. There's too many fine margin reports being made at the moment that the game and the fans are uncomfortable with.
What an incredibly meek and mild showing it was from the current day crop. Unacceptable, embarrassing. Dean Cox offered afterwards. Multiple 50s. They lost composure. They lost by 90 points, 53 the week before that. And he seemed to keep saying that, Dean Cox, they need to do the work, be prepared to do the work. So 12 unanswered goals, no answers, only one goal after half-time. And so poor were they that the crowd on the night, 35,000 of them, actually started cheering on the behinds in the second quarter when they were getting kicked. It was pretty grim.
Yeah. Well, can I just start with the post-match press conference? What's your opinion in terms of, is there a level of
resignation almost?
Well, how low are you allowed? Should you be as a coach? Should you still hold status quo that, yep, come in, give your reasons. This is what happened. This is why we lost. We've got to get better here.
Yeah.
This is unacceptable. No problem. But you still got to have the answers and the presence of a press conference. You are the senior coach. You are the man for the football club for that 10 minutes. I just felt like he fell into a really low space so early.
Not enough of a poker face.
Well, yeah, and even if he doesn't necessarily believe it, still sell the vision. Yep, we know we've had a bad performance. Yep, A, B, and C let us down. Not the players, the system, and then sell us how you get out of it. I think that's what the best do. Like I think it's just a dangerous one to be. This is unacceptable. This is embarrassing. It's a bad starting point. I feel as a start.
Must be hard for. I mean, they are human beings. Must be hard for him though, isn't it? Like you're coming in off the back of John Longmire. The side has been contending, and they just fall through the floor. And the injury list. So Wicks, and suspensions. Wicks, Papley, Mills, McDonald, Goulden, Robbie Fox, Harry Cunningham, Joel Amati suspended again.
It's not about injuries.
It's a fair alibi though, isn't it?
No,
it has to be.
No, I'm not with you on that.
Really. Nothing. Not a factor at all.
If Joel Amati plays, what difference does it make?
Oh, well, that's one player, but I've mentioned.
Yeah, I'll give you Papley and I'll give you
Goulden.
Goulden.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I think that they've got the same injury list as everyone else. So they didn't have a 90-point loss because of what's on the sidelines. In my eyes, they got smacked with a defensive mechanism. The Crows denied them the corridor. They took their game off them, and they accepted having their game taken off them.
Does that happen too often to it? Like, even when they were contending last year, it felt like they copped. In the last couple of years, they've copped some big losses, haven't they?
Yeah. So, look, they have. Well, last 2 weeks, they've conceded something like 133 and 131 points, Sydney. So you're looking at north of 120. Longmire coached 330-odd games, happened 8 times. I think 2 of those were in big finals. But 8 times in 330 games happened back-to-back weeks, 3 months in to Dean Cox. So he'd be thinking, okay, I dropped a senior core player that's really popular with the group in Ollie Florent, and it fell flat. Didn't even spark a response. So I'm more interested in where to from here. How do you step out of this? How do you get through this? So the use of Blakey fascinates me. Like, you haven't got many trump cards. So you've mentioned that Goulden's not there, Papley's not there. So who is there that can win you the game? Warner can win you the game. Heaney can win you the game. And I think your next best trump is Blakey. So what are you doing to get Blake into the game? He had 5 kicks.
Keys,
3 of them were kickouts.
Keys slaughtered him.
Yeah, so how do you leave him dying on an island like that? I think you, as a coach, have got to give this guy the solution. You've got to say, mate, you go in at centre bounces. You just go on free will. Do not get involved in picking up your men like the modern halfback flanker is doing. Are they doing that at Sydney?
It's interesting, your analysis of his body language and I guess his honesty. And he's almost bearing his soul in some way there, Dean Cox. There's a lot of supporters coming through saying, be real, be honest. A lot of Carlton supporters coming in saying, I wish Michael Voss spoke in these terms from time to time. It does my head in when he goes through his press conferences maintaining the charade in the eyes of Dav. So there's the other side of it too. But
getting smashed on the text here for the injuries discussion. But look around the competition, guys. I mean, Brisbane are missing Starcevic and Lincoln McCarthy and Kitty Coleman. Like there are names there that they've been without. Carlton have got a whole host of players on the sidelines. We talk about Collingwood. DeGoey and McStay would make more of an impact than the names we're mentioning at the Swans. So I'm only comparing them relative to the competition.
Okay.
So when you get smacked like this, all warts are exposed.
Just quickly on the Crows before we get to the news, they're 8-4 and third. They're looking ominous. They've got a big 2 games coming up before the bye. They've got Brisbane at home, into Hawthorn down in Tassie. So this is a great temperature check for the Crows.
Yeah, it is, and they've just got tools now. This midfield, we called it vanilla at the start of last year. They didn't like that. And now we see who's going into centre bounces, and it's the trump cards. I mean, you've got Saligo, who's become their prime midfielder, and then they spin Berry and Dawson 50-50 full forward on ball. Rankin goes in for probably 30%, 40% of centre bounce clearances. Thilthorpe, when he comes in as a ruckman, changes the dynamic. I really like the Riley O'Brien season. Not many people will talk about him glowingly, but I think internally they'd be thrilled with what he's doing. And then the spark of Rochelle in that forward 50 now.
Yeah.
The ability for him to play at this level, and not necessarily goals, but just craft, being able to set up scores, it allows so much with those other guys like Dawson and Rankin.
Top 4 from here?
Well, it's there, isn't it? They're going to have to take some scalps. They haven't really beaten anyone of note in
coming
the 8.
up.
I think
coming
they're
up.
1 and 4. I think
so if they can take down
teams.
Brisbane,
yeah,
or one of, or better yet, both.
Have to win one of the 2.
Yep. And they're so even. It was such an even performance at the weekend, and their pickups have been great. So Neil Bullen, influential again. Cumming, Peatling, they nailed the trade period, and they're nailing the season thus far. 8 wins from their first 12. The low light of the weekend, maybe even the highlight of the weekend that followed after that. Callan Ward, the game's record holder at GWS, has been open, kingy about this being his last year, wanting to play on at the age of 35, chasing that elusive premiership. His family are back home in Melbourne. They're doing it via correspondence, and his right knee buckles. He's down in Melbourne now. He'll consult with a specialist today. And then somehow, after the tears and all the consoling and the hugs from Lockie Whitfield and the like, he emerges at 3/4 time at the behest of his coach to rally the troops together, and they fight back from 28 points down. It was like a don't want to sound too cheesy about it. It was almost like a Hollywood movie in the end. The injured star comes out and the team rally from 5 goals down to get the win.
Yeah, if you've played footy long enough, you'll have an occurrence like this where one of your popular teammates goes down with a season-ending injury, and it upsets you. Like, personally upsets you and can rattle you in game. And I've got no doubt it affected them for the next sort of 40 to 50 minutes of footy. It's hard to just put that to the side and play how you listen to instruction, take in all information, process everything. It's difficult. It is an emotional game. You do invest in these sorts of things, and when one of your effective family members goes down, it's hard. So I don't ever recall seeing anything like this. I can't remember.
Well, Chris Judd was stretchered off with an ACL in what turned out to be his last game, but he hadn't committed to that being his final season from memory. But that had its moments at the MCG back in the day when he was stretchered off. But he's the inaugural co-captain of the club with Phil Davis, chasing that premiership forever. A ripping guy, and no one likes to see it end like this. So hopefully there's just some freakish occurrence, maybe Sam Darcy-like, where he avoids it, but it's looking increasingly unlikely.
Yeah, so we just dip our lid to him and say, well, unbelievable. Probably one of the stories of the year for him to personally, put aside his own emotions, his own situation, and get the team a win, really. In the end, that's what... And great from the coach to read the room a little bit. And I know what's going to impact this group. You get over there and talk to them.
That was big, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was great coaching from Adam Kingsley. But then when it comes to putting the ball through the sticks and actually fighting the fight, how did they get back? Lockie Ash had another cracking game for the Giants as well. How did they get back into it?
I don't. The simple answer is just they're kids. It wasn't Hogan and Green. Hogan got beaten all day, really, by Miller. That was terrific from the young key back from the Tigers. In the end, it was guys we talk a lot about Darcy Jones, I think, and probably rightly so. But Tom Green probably had his best 30-minute window at the back half of that game, just to give them an opportunity to win the game. And it's just the sum of all parts, really. I know it sounds really boring.
Yeah.
But Ash and Whitfield have done this all year. So I'm not really saying that they necessarily were the reasons that they got it done. I think their back six were really good. So of the last 18 inside 50s for Richmond, they conceded 2 points. So we're looking for the scores at the other end sometimes, and we forget the guys that hold up down back. I thought Buckley and Taylor, obviously, in that window were bulletproof, and the momentum swung.
Off the text, Tim Taranto has a good game and the corn goes missing. Coincidence? I think not. I love the Richmond game. Like they'd be gutted, clearly, and listening to Adam Uze, you can understand all of that. They'd be flat. But, gee, they poured everything into this game. But you look at Nank, pressed your back and started like a train.
What a start.
Into Taranto, into Hopper when they're in the mood. That four have seen a lot of footy.
Yeah, Taranto a couple of goals, which was significant just to give him that extra kicker. We know he can win 12 to 14 contested possessions. We know he can win clearance, but kicking the goals was the cream on top that they hadn't had. I just want to give some flowers to Adam Uze, and he's a coach that I think has drawn a lot of negative criticism at the start of the season. Their ability to set up the game at the start, I thought, was terrific. They only gave up in that first quarter 14 disposals in the corridor to GWS. GWS want to use angles, and they want to open up sections of the ground, largely coming through corridor, slicing and dicing. So to do that early really set the game up for them. They had a fantastic start. So credit to Adam for that. I just want to put on the radar, I still think this GWS midfield are nowhere near as tough as they have to be. They are still fumbly, and they are still two grabbers, and they are not violent enough to get from inside traffic to outside. So the game now is about taking it from contest into the uncontested skill game on the outside as quick as you can and as clean as you can. And they're miles from the best in the competition. So they got some work to do despite the win. Just because you win doesn't mean you've done everything well. They can't wallpaper over this. And I expect that Adam Kingsley will be still having some honest conversations with his mids.
Well, I know you're not big on injury lists, but again, there's some big names to come back into that midfield that will surely make a difference. Like Brent Daniels, been missing for most of the year. Make a massive difference, that inside to outside, surely. Yeah. Josh Kelly just back, hasn't played a lot. Stephen Cornelio, mysterious glute. Finn Callahan, of course, out for another month or so with the shoulder. So there's a bit to come back.
I'm not saying injured players don't help you, Sammy. But what I am saying is it doesn't accept the fact you can be beaten by 15 goals.
Of course not. You know who Richmond have got next, don't you?
Who's that?
Swans at the MCG.
They have not.
They have indeed this
My
Saturday.
Lord.
That was the first time the Saints have beaten Melbourne in 6 years. And this one after 3 straight losses, the Saints. They did kick, though, Kingy, half a dozen goals in 14 minutes to knock the stuffing out of Melbourne. And as the game went on, there was just a few signs that might have been back to the bad old D's. But, gee, the Saints, I've got a hard time sort of getting to the bottom of who the real St Kilda actually are, because they were good in Alice at the weekend.
Oh, they're very good. And I think they found one. Isaac Keeler looked really good. I think he's a young player that you've got to explore. Pick 44 a few years ago now. He's taken a little while. He's been a bit of a slow burn, and I still think there's so much opportunity for this young guy. What did he have? He had 7 touches in the first quarter, kicked a couple of goals. He looked like he was going to be have one of those games, a breakout style games. But I think that when the Saints are allowed to move the ball like they were early, they can seriously play. And if you're just off, they put it on your nose.
Nazaya?
Well, Nazaya, we always talk about Nazaya, but how he can roam around pretty much unopposed. I know that Swallow had him early, but
27 kicks.
yeah, I know. And 8 of those from kick out. So take 8 off. It's still a big day, isn't it?
You can afford to take 8 out.
So he's only had 3 contested possessions, right? So the easiest guys to shut down, in theory, are the guys that don't necessarily win it, because you can put runners on them.
They tried to shut him down. Aidan Johnson tried to put him to sleep.
Oh yeah,
That's so he passed the HIA, which is great. I was really just getting off topic for a moment. Ross Lyon says afterwards, I'm concerned about the way the game's going, and it's a physical game. Mate, he left the ground, bumped him in the head. No play on the ball at all.
Now, I said the same thing about Justin Longmuir last week. We can't have coaches talking like that. The game has changed.
Shocked.
Ross knows that. The game. Come on, the game's changed.
Anyway,
we don't talk enough about the star players in terms of the Saints, and Wilkie's game was just sensational.
Is he the most underrated player? I've been in love with Callum Wilkie since forever. Is he the most underrated player in the game? He's nailed on, reliable each and every week. He's a star of the game, I reckon, this guy.
I feel like there's the All-Australian key defender positions are up for grabs. I don't think there's a lock there just yet. And
he's a jet.
People will correct me on the text, I'm sure, but he had 11 intercepts on the weekend. And even whilst he was doing that, he had Melksham, who was driving him insane, trying to play him from behind and nudge him under the ball and take away his intercept game. So, we talk about the best players just beating what's in front of them. Well, he did that, which was terrific. And Windhager.
Big job. Toughest job. Probably.
Huge job. Yeah, you got the Cozzy Pickett match-up. Good luck.
12 touches and scoreless for Cozzy, so that's a big win. What did he have too, Marcus, the other way? 28.
Marcus had 28, yeah. 5 score involvements,
Oof.
5 clearances, 10 contested possessions. So it was a huge day for him. And he just annoyed Cozzy. Now, Cozzy's he plays, a lot of defenders play on Cozzy, but not a lot of taggers. So there is a difference. And the modern halfback flanker is not really a defensive tool as such. But he had a disappointing day, Cozzy. He just lost interest. He was concentrating on other things. He was throwing punches. He was ill-disciplined at times. And there was one moment late in the game where Windhager, he went right of the man who'd marked the ball, and Cozzy went left, and it gave a high-quality inside 50 entry to Windhager. Mark inside 50, and you thought, Cozzy, what are you doing, man?
7:21 they kicked, which is never going to help you win a game of football, Melbourne. Off the text, talk about the 7:21. We threw that game away, play it at the G. Melbourne win by 10 goals, and this is the thing, isn't it? 3rd loss in a row at Alice Springs. So when you sell games and you don't win those games, then the questions start to be asked. Commercial necessities v. football department necessities.
Yeah, and I understand both sides of the coin. But, there are certain stages where clubs just have to raise funds. There are certain stages, so I understand that, but I understand the footy department hate that because they're trying to get the 4 points, and a lot of people get sacked when the 4 points don't keep rolling in. But Melbourne did a lot right; they really did. I mean, but I think the Melbourne fans are sick of hearing, we just couldn't get it on the scoreboard. We just couldn't, do this.
It had that familiar, depressing look about it. 57 entries.
Changed. It has changed. The Melbourne profile.
Well, it had changed.
Well, you can't just say they've kicked 7:21. You can't say, now that's broken.
Now, you can pick any highlight or low light you like, but there was many in that game where they'd gone back to old habits for mine. Not the give, not the instinctive, not the forward handball, not the adventure with the ball. There was a few.
It doesn't just happen though, does it? I mean, you've got guys that have played 10, 12 years of footy. You just can't flick a switch or click your fingers and hope that hey, listen, now we're going to play like this. Yep. You're going to have some teething pains.
Yep. So 7-21-63, 14-7-91 in the end. So I don't know. I thought Melbourne might have been beyond the need to sell the games in the first place, but and there are other ways to raise funds. I'm not sure, but it'll always be a topic.
How else do you raise funds?
So
what are you thinking?
Well, there's other ways to raise funds, isn't there? How did Jim Steins wipe out the debt when he got there? It wasn't
I think that was cleaned up pretty quick with the next coaching appointment after that, wasn't it?
In part, yes.
I think that's a while ago now too. I mean,
we're going back a long way.
A long way.
But there are other mechanisms.
If your argument's hanging with that, I think
you asked me what other ways there are, and there are other ways.
Bit of strife.
I think Melbourne should be. I mean, this is not too long ago a premiership outfit, but anyway,
we're always going to have 2 or 3 teams have the need to sell games.
No, North Melbourne are doing it this coming weekend
Yeah.
over there in the west at Bunbury, so that'll be interesting to see how that goes. Long-time listener of this segment, first-time participant, so can I just ask the question, this is just a blatant rip of the seedings, or we just pick our 5 most likely?
Would you like me to be honest, or would you like me to lie to you a little bit?
I want you to be Dean Cox.
Honest.
Look at me, please. Look at me.
Well, the seedings were mine. I didn't take them with me. We didn't have there was no signing of papers or anything, so we just came up with a 5-ball-5. It added an extra team on.
So in the divorce settlement, you left the seedings with...
Didn't have a good divorce. I got fleeced. I left behind PFI, seedings, the lot.
All right. Who you got then? Do you go first here? Or?
Who you got at 5?
Adelaide.
Adelaide as well. No, sorry, I've got Western Bulldogs at 5.
Oh, I've got the Doggies at 4 because I'm a Doggies believer.
Same. We're both
okay.
We've both got the same 4 and 5.
Just want to see Adelaide do it consistently on the G. So I got the Dogs at 4. I got Brisbane at 3.
Brisbane at 3. I've got Geelong at 3.
See, I've got the Cats at 2. I just think Geelong, and that might be harsh on Brisbane, but gee, the Cats look ominous.
Brisbane at 2 for me, and the Pies.
No brainer.
Yeah, I think most people have the Pies at the top. If you could make a long-range ridiculous statement, right, which is what we're prone to here, I think the grand finalist will be Brisbane versus the winner of Collingwood and Geelong in whichever week they play, whether it's the first week or the third week.
Wow. And I thought Kane's holiday was early.
That's where
that grand final prediction's early.
I'm talking to
Kingy. I guess we sit in judgment and we review a couple of bye teams coming up. Well, we're in the bye, so it's a chance to pause and reflect, I suppose. You've got Fremantle. I've got the Saints.
You want me to start, or would you like to open the batting?
Let's start with the Saints, maybe.
Okay.
So what did they win coming into this game at the weekend? 1 of their last 7, 3 defeats in a row. They are 5-7. Their best appears to trouble most. Their worst looks terrible. So have they exceeded expectations? You're probably saying no. They won at the weekend, but their opposition did have 57 entries and 28 scoring shots. They rode their luck a bit. Have they failed to meet expectations? Probably not. They are 11th. Are they par? Maybe they're slightly ahead of par. They would have liked Max King out of the goal square. Halfback's doing the damage. Nazire, Sinclair, Wilkie's a star. We've covered him off. Top 4 defence last year, though, and slipped to 12th this year.
Yeah,
so their average
slide.
scores against from 76 to 89. The signature of Nazire is enormous. I don't know what sort of price you put on that in terms of win for the rest of the season, but his signature going forward is such a massive piece in the St Kilda puzzle. So that will be counted as a win on its own. I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10.
6 out of 10.
Maybe a 5.5. Somewhere, but 5.75. There you go. I'll put a decimal.
That's too finite. I've got the Fremantle Dockers, who's hit 7 and 5. 3 from 5 against top 8 teams. I did think they would be better than just making the 8 at round 12. I thought they might have been a stronger commodity than that. Their forward 50 still needs work, so the room for improvement to their forward 50, it's still below average given the names that are in there. And their ball movement, I still think, has the greatest upside. Are they a slick, handballing, come at speed out of the back half, or are they a more methodical chip, which we hate? But that's been a constant discussion. I'd like to see their defensive profile move from defending back 50 to coming up and winning the ball back a bit closer to goal. That's a work in progress. Their defensive numbers, though, across the board still stack up in the AFL top 5 or 6. So they're tracking nicely defensively. Really strong seasons again from Brayshaw and Sarong, and I like the year of Jordan Clark. I think he should be in any All-Australian discussion.
Yep.
I know he's not a household name, but he's having a very good year. The coach has to prioritise and get right, which he is looking at the moment, the role of Jackson, which is going to be a talking point for the back half of the year because he's a priority piece. And Shea Bolton's been terrific. Well, what an acquisition he has been. I think he's probably been right up there with Bailey Smith in terms of impact on new club in an off-season trade sense. The two players, there's 3 players that they've got that will make a significant difference if they can get right. So Hayden Young back from injury will be a godsend for them, but he still seems like he's a couple of months away. So I'm not sure where that sits in terms of what he's going to be able to offer. But you just feel like they need Jai Amos and Brendan Cox to find serious form. I think Cox is a high halfback or an intercepting halfback rather than a deep goal square player like he's been the last couple of weeks. And Jai Amos just hasn't had the impact that we thought that he would have. In behind Josh Tracy, who's had a terrific season and shouldered the bulk of the load, this guy should be able to ride shotgun and do a little bit more than what he's doing now. So they're the individuals that need to lift. I'm probably giving them a 6 out of 10 because they're at least in the 8. But I hoped for much, much better for this team in 2025.
All right. Well, they've got 6 of their next 8 at home. They've actually got their next 3 at home if you count the game down at Bunbury. So that's
if they're any good, they should be smashing North Melbourne, Essendon, St Kilda, Sydney. They got a tough one against the Hawks and then the Pies. They should be getting hold of the Eagles. They shouldn't lose at home to Carlton. So it opens right up for them now. How good are you? I think we're about to find out.
Yep. So they could very well find themselves 10-5. Coulda, woulda, shoulda, but 10-5, entrenched in the top 8. That would be by the end of round 16.